Yeah, and you had Mo with his penalty shots as well, which was, it was worth his weight as a player just for him to have to take penalty shots, because we, for some reason, got into a lot of shootouts that year, didn't we? Things were tight, and we were probably punching a little bit and trying to get established, and we went to a lot of shootouts. And Mo had the golden touch, didn't he? You just knew you could rely on him, and he'd go out and get that first one. You put him as the first shooter, and you'd get that one under the belt, and that saw us a lot of wins.
Is there anything better than an Andrew Lord goal celebration as well? The way he milks that.
It's like but what I love about it, it's like it's his first ever goal.
Yeah.
You watch any celebration, and it's like childlike glee.
It is.
That just it rubs on your face. I just think. I love playing. I think Ivan Matulik used to do something similar where his was more kind of like pent up rage that was released. But I just love when players lose themselves in that moment, because there's nothing worse than a player who scores and kind of nonchalantly skates very calmly. I was just like, be happy about it.
Yeah.
But you're quite right. I do love a tug of the shirt, a smile up to the crowd,
And again, we thought this year was all about, reuniting the fan base and igniting the passion. A lot of people had fallen out of love with the game, and moments like that are just priceless for that. In terms of getting everybody in it together, and people in the stands as excited as Andrew Lord is scoring goals.
Absolutely.
One thing that took place within this streak and. Within all the hysteria of having the club back and firing all cylinders, Paul Bissonnette signed and then backed out. Yes. What this season could have been if Paul Bissonnette landed in the UK. Franny, how close was Biz to landing back in Cardiff and being part of this team?
Well, I mean, he was signed. He was, I think he just got released from his American League team. He was looking for another team, and he got back in contact with us, which was great news. I think we tried for him in the summer. Obviously, if we could have got him back, that would be a massive coup, and what a way to launch the new era. So we got back in touch with him. He signed an American League deal. Fair enough. He obviously had aspirations to get back to the NHL. So he signed there. Then things didn't quite work out, or maybe it's a number of players that they had sent down from the NHL team, which is quite often the way, and they had to make some room. And we had negotiations, and he was signed as a player, but he was hanging on because he wanted to get another American League deal with a view again to, if that NHL if the NHL parent team was short of a player of Biz's ilk, then he might get some callbacks and earn his way back into the show. So we signed him, but he wanted a clause in there that if over the days before he actually flew over, a team came in for him, he wanted us to be able to release him. So we had him signed, we announced it, and I think we announced it in the transparency that was to become a trademark of the club now, and talk about earning the trust back, that he is signed, however there is an option if a team comes in for him. And I think it was literally the day before he was going to fly, LA Kings organisation comes in for him, and they had a deal. And are you going to turn down the LA Kings, even for sunny Cardiff? So it
I would, Franny, obviously.
So it was, it wasn't to be, but there's a lot of excitement. You can imagine how excited Steve King and Brian Parker and Kelly and Craig were that Biz was. They'd heard about his time with us before, and obviously he's got legendary status around the hockey world, and would have been an amazing fit for us here. But it wasn't meant to be.
The Cardiff Crosby, almost. Franny, do you think if the deal had been done a month later, that the team that signed him maybe would have gone? So was he put on the radar by having signed elsewhere? I'm just thinking there's a bargaining position here for the team that signed him, where they go, oh, wait a minute, he is about to go to Europe. Maybe we need to make our move now.
No, I think it was that his agent was actively seeking a deal for him in North America, and had some interest. Nobody was sort of committing, and it wasn't quite there. And it was his agent obviously stands to gain a lot more if he signs an American League deal, potential NHL deal. So he was always going to chase that deal, and probably even when he was here, he would have still continued to try for him, knowing that we would have released him if he had that opportunity back in North America. So I don't think it was releasing the news when we did, because we were a day away from having him, but there was always that chance that he'd go back. But it was just the agent doing his job and doing it well.
Yeah, he did thank the Devils publicly for considering him, and we've always got great memories of his time here the first time. Of course, quite a remarkable thing for such a big personality in the hockey world to have been a part of Devils history.
Played in a tent.
He did. Yeah. And took some fabulous photos of a night out on St. Mary's Street, I seem to remember.
And we still get mentioned a few times in his Spit and Chicklets podcast.
Or maybe you could mention this podcast as well. You can podcast Unity in
we don't need it. Yeah.
So there's the 3 losses in 20 games from November to January, and the club is really on a roll in the league, and there's a sense that there's a genuine title challenge being laid down, and there's a real buzz, and every new ownership promises the world when they take over, but I think very quickly the genuine sentiment that was posed to Devils fans is embraced, and everyone knows this is for real. The title charge takes a little bit of a dip late January. John, I'll come to you on this. The 25th of Jan starts a run of 5 losses in 6 games, including a couple in Scotland and a 6-0 loss at home to the Sheffield Steelers. And I cannot remember this game for the life of me. It must be some sort of traumatic...
I think I blanked it out because I never had...
I looked at it earlier, and it was... I have no... is this the diving game with Waugh and Clarkson being thrown out? Is that...
Possibly. You have to ask Salad that one, because he got his brief on Twitter from some Steelers fans. I don't remember that, but I think it's interesting.
If you don't remember, John, question whether it even happened.
I'm not sure. Actually.
Let's go with the typo.
But for the season as a whole, the backdrop of it to be, and I mean this in the nicest possible way, to be going against G and Sheffield, and what had happened in Cardiff and so on and so forth. Obviously, G had won the playoffs the year before, and a shootout with the Steelers is exciting and gets the blood pumping at the best of times. And then you throw G into the mix, where you're kind of rooting for him, but you're kind of not at the same time. And I think I remember a stage where, and again throwing a hockey cliche in, there became an over-reliance on that Martin, Morissette, Lord line, and I think the secondary scoring dried up a little bit, and maybe teams were matching up well against that Martin line, and then the Devils were starting to look a little lethargic and what have you. There was obviously the focus on another competition, which I know we'll come to, but maybe the Devils thought that was the one that was a little bit more winnable. But no, to be back in that title race anyway was a real shot in the arm, because as I mentioned in the World Record podcast, that's where I always expect the Devils to be, and it was great to kind of be back there so soon, and the excitement was building, and to be going against Sheffield and G in a former coach and hero of many people in Cardiff. It was a really interesting season.
Yeah, I think one of the triggers in that bad run of form, there was an injury to Jesse Mitchell, and I remember it really, really well. We played up in Nottingham. I think a guy had made a clumsy hit on him, and I remember the guy like Charles Landry, who's a D-man, and Mitch dropped the gloves, had a fight with him, caught him with some perlers, might have even knocked his teeth out.
Yeah, I remember that fight eventually.
Remember the fight, and in the fight, what had happened, where he'd caught him with a massive bomb, he caught him in the teeth, and basically the teeth had cut through his knuckles. So Mitch had a lot of blood pouring out of his knuckles. You look at it, and it was a deep, deep wound. So we obviously got their team doctor, and he said, I need to stitch that now. So he did. He stitched that. Quite a nasty wound, like I said, across the knuckles. And then obviously you're hoping then for as soon as that's recovered, then he's back in the lineup. But what happened then was he got an infection in his knuckle. So in days after, he knew something wasn't right. His hand had swollen up. It was massive. When the skin goes all thin and you get that big balloon hand. And he had this infection, and we quickly get it looked at by our medical team, and it's his heart, and they're like, right, this is bad. You have to go straight to hospital. So they sent him to hospital. They admitted him. They took him down for surgery. So what turns out, your teeth has got a lot of bacteria in it, I don't know about Charles Landry's oral habits. I'm not saying anything like that, but I think it's in general your teeth have got a lot of bacteria in them.
Science and hockey.
Yeah.
At no point when we launched this podcast I think that Charles Landry's oral health would ever be uttered.
It's a new name for the podcast.
So this had got infected, and maybe it wasn't washed out as well as it could have been before the stitch up. So he had to go in for surgery. They had to reopen it. They had to clean it all out, stitch it back up, keep him in hospital. It still stayed infected. They had to do another operation, so he's on 2 operations now. There was even talk that if the infection spread all the way down his finger, he could lose his finger, and it was literally that bad. And you can imagine how petrified Mitch was at the prospect of losing a finger, career over, and a disability for life there. And luckily they managed to clean it out and get rid of the infection, and did a great job in it there. But he was out of the lineup for a lot of time, so we lost that dynamic of that. We talked about mirroring the Belfast third line. All of a sudden we lost that dynamic. We're a guy down, and yes, we had guys to step up into the role, but Mitch was starting to come into his own as a player. You could see him improving all the time. So that was a big loss for us.
It's true, because the lines had juggled a little bit, and I think this is when the Dad Clarkson line had come together, and Mitch was playing.
Because we did actually sign. Steve King, true to his word.
Yeah.
We knew this was going to be a kind of break or even season, but he allowed us to go out and sign an extra player. So we got Marcus Tatanen.
Yeah.
So we brought Tatanen in, which is a guy that we talked to in the summer.
Yeah.
Lauder knew him from when they played in the DL2. Respected him as a player. I think had known him a little bit off the ice and said, he's a great guy.
Any truth we were after Doucette at that time?
Where was Doucette then? He went and signed in
Denmark,
Denmark,
he came back to Nottingham.
Yeah, he did. We did speak to Doucette, but he opted for Nottingham to go there, and obviously we continued that talk, and we ended up getting him the year after. But so we ended up signing Tatanen as a veteran player, experienced face-off specialist. And he worked out, I think, great for us. And there was a pivotal moment. We'll talk about the Challenge Cup final. I think he's on for that last straw and things like that. But it did upset the dynamic that we were rolling so well with that Martin line dominating the league. You got the Culligan line behind it, and then you got the Energy line just keeping it going all the time. And it did upset the dynamic of our team, and I think that was a contributor to that wobble that we had.
Also, Margaret Tatanen had the best ever photo of a rival where he had his reading glasses on. And he looked like he was launching his autobiography, when novelists.
He looked at least like a hockey player.
Brilliant.
I think he was met by Deese, wasn't he? So that was a clash of cultures.
And he forever became known as Titties then, because rather than Tats, Deese came up with Titties, and he was like... he's walked into a dressing room and everyone's calling him Titties, and I just don't think he knew what was going on.
Should we do a Deese episode?
Oh God, it's X-rated. Yeah. How to be X-rated on that?
So that's where the league kind of is. The Devils are close, but there's a sense that there's a few games going awry. Scotland again is an enemy. There's a couple of losses in Edinburgh and Fife, and I guess we'll come on to that in later podcasts, how that hoodoo is kind of abolished, and that's a big reason, personally, I believe, why league titles started to come back. But of course, the story of this season is a Challenge Cup run. As usual, group stage unremarkable.
Yeah, I think we just sneaked through it, didn't we?
Yeah,
just about sneaked through it.
Yeah, just about made it in the last spot there. And for me, an excellent couple of quarter-final games against the Belfast Giants, where the second leg was at the tent, and I believe Hudson got a big power play goal.
Yeah, we haven't really talked about Hudson.
Hudson.
He was a guy that when Lordo first signed for the Devils, so remember we signed him on the university deal. I'd already been speaking to him for 3 years and kind of respected him and knew he had a lot of experience and stuff. And I was asking him, what players do you know that we can look at? And he recommended Carl Hudson then. So I'd spoke a little bit with Huddy the year before. Thank God we didn't bring him in then. He stayed in Germany, and when Lordo then took over and we're kind of plotting out this team, and it was myself, Lordo and Todd kind of putting down the roles, Hudson was a guy that we both remembered could fit in the mix, and this time it was meant to be, so he came across, and what an exciting player to watch. I mean, the amount of times me and Lordo had our heart in our mouths, because no matter if he was the last man back and there was a puck in the air, rather than make the safe play and back out, he would bat it out the air, and he would do it 19 times out of 20, and we'd just be like, oh my God, he was high risk, high reward, but more often than not he came out, and great player to watch.
Power play as well, that one time it was a right hand shot, power play, that created a lot of goals.
Yeah, and we talk about this group in terms of how well they got on. Huddy was pretty much central to every funny moment on a night out, which anyone that knows Hudson off the ice, Crazy Carl was his nickname, and it's something to be seen. And I'm sure most people who've been to an event or whatever where there's beers flowing will know Crazy Carl is just a different fella, and very good memories of him. Another great guy.
That Belfast game, sorry, Kev, was obviously an emotional night because I remember Todd being on the bench at the end and almost doing the cheerleading with the crowd, and obviously Todd's got a huge amount of respect for Belfast. Big part of his life was there, and the Belfast Giants are a great organisation. But I wonder, and I don't know, maybe Franny can comment on this, whether that was almost justification to Todd, or he felt some sense of relief when the Devils, his new organisation, were able to see off in that competition what were the best team in British ice hockey at the time. They had been so dominant the year before. It was crazy that Todd Kelman had left and come to this tent in Cardiff to knock the Giants out. I think that was a big moment for Todd, probably. Yeah,
I think it's human nature, isn't it, that if somebody plays against their old side or whatever it is, it's always that extra bit satisfying that the new place you've gone to has got one over on them, and there's a sense of achievement there, and that was a big moment, because like we talked about, the Giants had our number for way too long, had dominated us, and we were in a head-to-head competition with them, and we ended up putting them out of it on our way to the final. So it was that was again, when you talk about turning points and pivotal moments, I think that's got to be one.
A 4-3 win away in what was then the Odyssey Arena, and then a 4-2 victory in the tent sees the Devils through to the semi-final against the Coventry Blaze, and the Devils.
Was this the Culligan goal?
It is.
I forgot about.
Can we talk about, just before we go on to that? I'm not sure if it was in the quarter final against Belfast, but that's when the Hendo hip check against Westgar. Yes. Do you remember that?
Yeah.
And the one that was replayed time and time again. And I don't think we've seen, apart from Stephen Cooper and his one in Europe and the one on Dan Dory or wherever he steps up, that hip check was just unbelievable, because Westgarth obviously absolutely nails, and he's going down the boards. He thinks he's got Trevor Hendricks, and everybody that's been watching Hendo week in, week out, and that tent suits him perfectly. You can see the little shuffle, and he just absolutely smashes him, and the whole place rocks. And one of my favourite moments of that season.
Talking about Westgarth that season, I know we're digressing, but tough guy in his own right, but Tyson Marsh just deciding when he does fight, he wants to fight the toughest guys in the league.
Well, that's Marshy, is that he he is tough in his own right, and he dived in after a teammate with no regard for his own safety. But another sort of little ditty about Westgarth is that when he come over, like everybody was like, "Oh my God, they've signed the toughest player," and we've seen the devastating fights that Westgarth had in the NHL and AHL, and he'd been really quiet, hadn't he?
Mm-hmm.
And I don't know if it was that hip check that had quietened him up or whatever. So everyone was really surprised, and he was just okay. You see it, don't you? There's someone that's been on $1 million contract to fight over there.
Stanley Cup winner.
Yeah, comes to a league where he's getting paid an absolute fraction of that. Why should I bother? And he kind of had that. I'm not going to do the fighting bit anymore. So it was almost quite nice to play against him, and I don't think he had the impact that anyone expected. And then we played one game in the Odyssey, and all of a sudden he is running around like mad, and we're like. And there's a moment where Cully, who's one of the cleanest players, loses his feet, slides, and he knocks over Westgarth. Westgarth gets up, and he launches himself, and he starts hammering down on Cully, who's on the floor. Hendo, being great team guy that he is, comes in to confront Westgarth, and Westgarth turns around and basically suckers him. Hendo's down, and we're like, oh my God! And Hendo had a concussion off the back of that. I remember, in the dressing room after, he's like, I'm not right, and we're like, what? Where did this Westgarth come from? This is the one we were expecting to see, but and then we found out. Someone tells us, you know why he's running around tonight, don't you? There's a film crew from North America, and they're filming a documentary around tough guys, and they're filming him tonight. So he's obviously put a show on for the cameras, and that documentary was Ice Guardians. So we'll blame Vic Silverwood for Hendo's concussion. Yeah. But it was the footage that you see in that Ice Guardians film I think that incident is on there. He gives Hendo a concussion, but Hendo jumping in, and all of a sudden it lit the fire under Westgarth for that game. Where were we, guys? We were on Coventry.
That's okay. Belfast. Quarterfinals done and dusted. The semi-final first leg, a pretty straightforward 4-1 victory in the away leg is exactly what you want. Tapman, I think, got his first goal in that, and there's a real sense now that a final is within touching distance. So it's 4-1 away, and then it comes back to the Big Blue Tent. At the time, I was living in London, commuting back for certain games. This one was midweek. So I fired up good old Cardiff Devils TV at the time to listen to young...
Do I get to mention how I used to commentate?
Okay, let's throw that in there. You haven't said it for a while.
Two young enthusiastic broadcasters in John Donovan and Aled Lloyd, and Chris Culligan scores a remarkable goal which is beamed across the world.
Yeah, it's on NHL.com.
NHL.com, ESPN, pretty much any North American outlet that's got time to fill in their 24-hour schedule was put in the Chris Culligan goal. I think it made a top 5 end of season list as well. John, you had a pat on the back from Chris Culligan for your analysis of his goal, because you gave him big props for staying onside in the first instance.
Yeah, that's right, because it was like the grenade pass over the top, wasn't it?
Yeah. First of all, Aled called the goal, and it was a fantastic goal. Chris Culligan's going to get forgotten in this, obviously. Aled calls the goal, and it's a fantastic goal call, and the finish itself is fantastic on his back, the awareness where it is. But I really love the start of the play, because when you think how congested the ice is at the Big Blue Tent, as Franny said, it's that kind of grenade pass over the top, and not only does he pull it out of the air, he drags his leg to stay onside when he's got bodies around him. And I just remember seeing that and thinking, this guy's got hockey smarts to be able to know exactly where he is on the ice, to be able to know to drag his leg, to be able to judge the pace of the puck that's coming at him, and that was in itself for me a thing of beauty. And then he fought off 2 or 3 checks as he went to the net. He gets knocked to the ice, but has the wherewithal, kind of like that Ovechkin goal when he finishes off his back on the backhand, to know that the goalie, I'm guessing, would have been Stewart. That would have been was slightly out of position, and I think the Coventry defender hadn't stopped at the net. He'd gone past the net, and because he thought maybe the play was dead, and Culligan wasn't getting that from the hit. And then just in a flash, Culligan on his back, on the backhand side, just flicks the puck into the net. And Alan's goal call was superb, and we've seen some great goals in this new era. You know, you called one in Gaz for Jake Morissette in Ice Arena Wales opening weekend, but I can't think of many more. Just
instinctive
is the word. To every facet of that, to stay on side, to fight off body contact, drive into the net. And Chris Culligan's not the biggest guy in the world, and then when he falls to the ice, to still have a picture in his mind of where the defenseman is, where the netminder is, and where the net is. And boy, what a goal that was!
It's one of those goals I was watching on my TV at home. You don't really comprehend that it's gone in. It wasn't until you hear Aled come in with his quality call that it kind of dawns on you what's just happened. Frankly, from a club point of view, when you've got that sort of marketing tool to spread the word around the hockey community that good things are happening in Cardiff, what does that kind of mean to the club?
Yeah, I mean, I think it was the best thing about it for me is it gave a spotlight to Chris Culligan, who was someone that didn't look for a spotlight, that was very much a team first kind of player, would never ever seek himself ahead of the team. And I think it was just like a nice pat on the back that all of a sudden this has gone viral worldwide. I don't know how many hits it had, and it was, it was obviously a great opportunity for us to show off, the Elite League and the Cardiff Devils, and the fact that we were making this resurgence. But for me, the fact that it gave Cully a little bit of a spotlight, which was ultra deserved, was the best thing.
Yeah.
So the Challenge Cup final is where the Devils roll on to, against all the odds, something I don't think that was marked down on paper at the beginning of the year as an aim, but they made it, and it's the same team that they're in a title race with, the Sheffield Steelers. The day before, the Devils win 12-0 against the Dundee Stars on the Saturday, so that's a nice leisurely stroll into the Sunday. John, I vividly remember speaking to you on the Saturday night because I was travelling up on the Penarth Fun Bus that had been arranged, and I just remember you as calm as you like turning to me and saying, "We're going to be alright tomorrow."
Well, I was, and I give credit to Franny and the new ownership for this. Anytime the Devils were in a final or a sniff of a trophy in the preceding years, the earlier years, I was ultra nervous because you didn't know when the next opportunity would come around to win a trophy. But you got the impression with this new ownership group that the Devils would be competing for years to come, and this was just the start of something. So that was one of the reasons I was calm. The other reason I was calm, and I vividly remember you saying this to you guys on the bus going up, and anyone who knows my obsession with the league title, I just kept going, I don't really care about today, it's Wednesday. Wednesday's the one I want to win, or because we were playing Sheffield the following Wednesday. So for the first time ever, I was very calm and just obviously the nerves kick in, but the crucial thing is, and I know we'll talk about the game in more detail, but the Devils get the first goal. It's so good not to be chasing the game, and it's so critical. We got that power play at the end of the first period, then you had that fresh ice at the second, and it was a really nice power play goal, which Lordo scores it, which is just poetry. And
you get the celebration.
You get the celebration. Yeah,
the travelling fan. I mean, we must have had about 1,000 people there.
It was just. And the other, just going back to him, and we talked about Ben Bounds earlier. Ben Bounds was having a good season, but I just felt he grew into his skin in that game.
Yeah, I think that was the game that actually transformed him into a leader, a legitimate goaltender, wasn't it? Because up to then, I mean, we haven't spoken much about him in that, but to go on the runs that we'd gone on, to be in that position, we needed solid goaltending. And he'd exceeded expectations from, a promising goalie that was playing in Hull to come into, to backstop this new era. All this thing about building the team around him, and he had been definitely exceeding expectations. But there was always that thing, is it enough for a championship team to have this British goalie or a relatively unproven goalie? And that game was he was phenomenal.
He was fantastic. And again, Gaz, I'm sure you'll go in more depth. The other player I'd like to give a little bit of. We'll cut that bit out, Gaz. The other player I'd like to give some praise to. Remember in the third period, Matthew Myers, who was having a hell of a game, goes down injured, and Chris Jones has to jump in and take a regular shift.
Yeah.
And the responsibility that Chris Jones played with on that third line, didn't miss a beat, played regular minutes. It was still a good shutdown line. And I think Chris Jones was never going to put up 100 points a season, but you've got to recognise guys like him and pick it for the roles they play. And I thought in the third period of that Challenge Cup final, Chris Jones was superb.
Yeah, big shout out to the fourth line crew.
Absolutely.
I think you've covered a lot of that pretty well. The owners came over for what was, I guess, they've been at a visit before, but this was, I think, the day where all the Devils fans really took them in. They went on the supporters bus. Yeah. They got stinking drunk.
Well, they topped up, I think, from the night before, celebrating a 12-0 win against Dundee.
But it was a real sense of community in that stand that day. Everyone was on the same page. Yeah. The owners were very happy to muck in. I think that what they kind of proved was they are hockey fans, like you mentioned earlier on in this episode, Frank, is they are hockey people at heart, and they just wanted to have fun. And everyone did have fun. Probably wouldn't have had as much fun if we'd lost, of course. No.
But I even think the fact that we were there meant so much to people, and you saw that by the numbers that travelled up there. The fact we were in a final again for the first time in 10 years. We were in a final again, and like a cup final rather than the playoffs. But and everybody had come together, and the enjoyment was back, the spark was back, and leading the charge with the owners who had spent every game that they'd watched us. I think, like you said, they'd been over once before, and that the night before the Challenge Cup final, sitting in the stands, they didn't want to go up in a sort of private. Well, we only had private corners of the BBT, didn't we? We didn't have suites. But they were sitting with the fans. They were engaging with them. They were having a beer with them. They were having a laugh with them. And then they didn't want to go up on the team bus. They didn't want to go up on a private car. They wanted to go on the fan bus, and they were wearing their hockey helmets with the goal horns on them and things like that. And it just sums them up that how lucky that we got that these guys. It all fell into place for these guys to own it because they're hockey people first and foremost.
We haven't actually mentioned them that much, guys, but the actual owners themselves, and again, having the honour of being slightly close to the team over the last few years, you and I have experienced this. Steve, Craig, Brian, Kelly. Am I missing? There's only four of them.
Four,
and Todd as well. They are the not just fantastic owners for the Devils. They are the nicest guys. Going and all
the crew that come with them as well.
Being welcomed in with their families and sharing drinks with them and so on and so forth. It couldn't be a better experience. And also, not too embarrassingly, in the room there is that iconic image of the Challenge Cup final when the buzzer goes and you see Franny celebrating. That must have been a huge kind of release for you. And
it makes a change from the pictures where I've almost got the same facial expression, but it's normally like yelling at a referee. But this time it's like a yell of elation, and it was total disbelief because I remember that we talked about Andrew Lloyd gets the lead.
Yeah.
Did it go 1-1 or
no? 2-0.
2-0. And Culligan,
they were quick fire.
It was Hendo rims the puck around. Well, the puck gets rimmed around. Hendo takes a shot, and Culligan gets the tip, and it goes in, and we're 2 up. And then later in the game, then they get back to 2-1. And
in the crease, by the way, the Sheffield player. Still annoyed we didn't get the shutout for Ramsey.
But you things start like going through your mind, and you don't want to admit it, but you're like, that's a typical example. That goal shouldn't have been allowed. Oh my God, here we go again, kind of thing, And it's 2-1. They're one shot away from tying up the game, going into overtime and robbing us, And we'd had so much heartbreak leading into that final that. when that buzzer went, it was sheer disbelief. Yeah. It was like all the emotions under the sun that all came out. And that picture is one of my favourites.
Franny, I remember, and Mark Richardson, because Mark Richardson, fantastic player. And I always joke about this. When I spoke to him, up until that point, he was a bit of a jinx. He didn't win it. Mark Richardson. So for Mark Richardson to win that, and just on that Culligan goal, every time it's replayed. And I'm sure you guys have seen this, but I love it. He jumps at the plexi, and he's obviously jumping at the Sheffield fans. And there's that one lone Sheffield fan, and I can understand his emotions. It's up there, I'm not sure, and I don't mean that disparagingly. But one of them gets up and gives the middle finger salute to Kelly, and that's a fond memory of that goal.
It's a crazy way you remember as well, because I just remember in that third period when the Steelers were ramping up the pressure and it was 2-1. Yeah. I remember Doug Clarkson on his hands and knees throwing a stick to get the puck out of the zone. I think he had got a tip on it, and then he was so tired, he'd been out there for a while, we couldn't get it out, and just on his hands and knees, he knew if he just went a little inch more, he could get it out of the zone, and he did, and went for a change. And I think it was at that moment where I felt a bit more calm. Yeah. So I thought if they're willing to go through that and to go that extra mile to make sure we see this out,
and then we get that face off, don't we? Yeah. With like maybe 3 seconds left in the zone, in our zone, and again in your head, this is not trying to be calm has gone out the window. Now we are 3 seconds away from our first trophy in 10 years. Yeah. The perfect way to launch the new era. Tatanen, who was a late pickup for us, goes in there and he does enough on the face-off. I don't think he wins it cleanly, but he does enough not for them to get a clean win back to the D-man and the shot on net. Haddad was out there, I remember, and that moment is I think still my favourite. Certainly my favourite moment in coaching. Maybe my favourite moment in hockey because. And of all the things that we've won since Steve King, Todd, and Lord have been in place, the owners even say that that's probably their favourite because it meant we were back, didn't it? Yeah.
And Tyson Marsh lifts the trophy well. Yeah. He did a good job.
He did. I mean, it was weird because we almost didn't know how to celebrate. Yeah. You look at. Say Sheffield when they were winning things regularly, and John as a captain has lifted so many trophies. I mean, he's so well versed at it. When you look at GB in the recent win in the World Championships, he's got this celebration all planned out where he gets the team around him, and there've been so many moments where Sheffield lifted. We had it, and we didn't really know what to do for a second, and I think we stayed on the ice, didn't we, for an hour after the game. I mean, the magical thing on a personal level for me is that my wife Laura had taken the last minute decision to drive up to the game. So my girls were really young. I think they were like 2 and 3.5 or something. They were really young. She'd taken that last minute, and they came and joined me on the ice, which is that's a lifetime moment for me.
And Sheffield knew how to celebrate so much. There were balloons in the rafters the entire hour that the Devils celebrated.
Yes. The other thing, final point, this has no relevance whatsoever, which is typical from me. But I remember all those pictures of the Devils celebrating, and one thing I think I've got to thank Franny for as well. Green back on the kit, and I love the fact that green back on the kit. If I can get green shorts at some stage, Franny, or maybe the old logo on a third kit, but the green back on the kit, beautiful.
Yeah, we need a hashtag campaign for green shorts and an old logo third jersey, because I'm on board with that. Yeah. I'm totally on board. So that was the icing, the cherry on top of what was a remarkable season. The Wednesday after, the Devils lost 11-0 to Sheffield in the league, but it doesn't really matter. Didn't make the playoff again either, but it was all about the Challenge Cup, and it was the foundation, no doubt. It taught the Devils how to win again. Yeah, I'm sure
it was getting over that line, wasn't it? So moments for Ben Bounds personally. He was a young British netminder who had won something. So all of a sudden, he gets a legitimacy about him. For a club that hasn't won in 10 years, and we had all the heartbreaks in the playoff final, we've got over that line. Lordo is a first-year coach, a first-year player coach. He's got his first trophy. Todd, best GM in the league, renowned, has won trophies in Belfast, has come over in his first year to a new, basically a new club as we were. We had to be reborn. He gets a trophy in his first year. The owners, first time they've ever owned a club, and 3 out of 4 of them are there. They come down and celebrate on the ice, and I love the picture as well. There's the 3 owners, and Sully's in the picture as well. He's a big part of it. I remember got to mention him belting out the anthem. Do you remember how good that anthem was before the game?
It was
that what a start. I said to him at the time, what a start. Yeah. He got us off too.
Yeah. Just I know we kind of. And this is mainly because I got to rush off. But I know we're curtailing and talking about the end of the season as if it fizzled out. We were still. I remember when Carl Hudson put us 1-0 up in Sheffield on that Saturday night. If we'd have taken that win that night and then we played Nottingham the next night, we would have been champions. And Jeff Legui was it, as he always does, or as he always did for Sheffield, just got a heartbreaking decisive goal, and they beat us 2-1 that Saturday night. And G had the title, and I won't grudge him because I never want Sheffield to win anything. But a good man got some reward there. We stayed in that title race all the way to the end, and my feelings about it as a fan were we were back in the conversation. When you talked about teams that had potential to win things, we were now back in the conversation, and obviously thank Franny for that, thank Lordo, thank Todd, and thank the owners, and it's continued right up until the present day.
And long may it continue. I'm sure we'll all agree with that. Thank you for joining us on this trip down memory lane to the 14-15 Elite League season. As we said at the top of the show, a season that is possibly one of the most pivotal in Devils history. And I think we've covered every nook and cranny of it. So I've been Gareth Hewitt on behalf of John Donovan and Neil Francis. Thank you ever so much for listening. You can find us on Twitter at FrannyBTB, and we'll have a new poll up for the next episode, and we'll go through some more memories and unearth some more secrets. But for now, thank you ever so much for joining us. Thank you, gentlemen.
Thank you.